How are you guys doing? Can you hear me?
Hi, Anvesh. We're good. How are
Hi.
you? I can hear you. Yeah.
Good. Okay, cool. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, I see the
Okay,
notepad.
cool. So before going through today's class, I would like to ask, did you guys get a chance to look at the assignment?
Yeah, I was partially able to look at it, not completely.
Okay.
Yep.
Lakshmi, did you get a chance? Are you talking on mute? I cannot hear you.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, almost done with the assignment. Anvesh will submit tomorrow.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Thank you.
awesome. Okay. Yes. And a few others said they cannot make to the class, so I'll start it today. So, this is where we left our class on Friday. Like we created few things. We created divs, spans, or did I tell you guys about span, or is this new? Anyways, so div can be used for separating or
Grouping.
separating, yeah, grouping together. And span is something similar, but it's a little different. I mean, let's say you cannot use any other sort of HTML tag. I would just use a span. Like if I cannot use bold, italic, or if I cannot use anything else, I would usually use a span. Span doesn't have any special characteristics. Div is like a block element. If you remember, block elements is it creates a new line, or it is always created in a new line. On the other hand, span continues in the same line. So if I want to continue in the same line, but I want to have declared this separately for any reason. For example, I can have a different class, or I can have a different ID for this one, just this particular text. If I want to do something special with this one, I can use a span. It's similar to div, but instead of div, which is a block element, this is a span is more of an inline element. So I can say this is a span. I can continue typing. So, and you can see in case of span, it continues. In case of div, this doesn't continue in the same line. So it would be, you can see that this is div, but just of it goes to the next one. In fact, it's so if I want to use span doesn't create anything special for this one. It isn't any different than normal text, but I would use it in case if I want to, like for example, I want to have a color for this one, like let's say background color equal to red. So I just want a background color to be red just for this part. So I would use something like that. And now the background color is red. Coming to down here, the style attribute, similar to other attributes we have. Style is used to what it describes. It says, in order to style a particular tag. So down here, I want to style this one to have a different color. And that is what it does. Let me separate down this. Okay. Okay. So there are different ways I can actually style. For example, I can style it by specifying the particular attribute style and mentioning all the properties I can have in here. And there are different properties. I can, for example, there's a font family. I can specify Times New Roman, something like that. If you want to look at the list of font families, you can actually look at a Word document. If you open a Word document, and you can see the families down here. There are plenty, and I can use almost all of these in our HTML pages. Anyways, or if I want to increase the font size, simply I would say 10 pixels, or increase, or I want to specify in this case. So now the font size is 10 pixels. And similarly, I can specify as many properties I want to, not just one property. So, and if I have more than one property, I always separate them using a semicolon. And this is how I have the properties as property name and property value. Property name here is background color. The value is red, so that is what it is. And in order to mention another one, I would put a semicolon and I would specify the property name and the value here. This is one way of styling a particular tag. And similarly, if I want to, let's say, have a background color for this one, I can do the same thing. I can create this one. But if I want to do it for more than one thing, I have to just basically copy it here. Okay. And this is not the best way of actually doing these things. If I want to have a background color for all of the LI list items, I have to specify this way. And there is another way, or a better way of doing this one. Instead of doing it here, okay, for individual items, list items, I can actually mention a style tag here in the head. And earlier I mentioned there are few tags which can actually go into the head, and one of them is style. And in this case, if I want to specify all the list items needs to be of color red, I would simply say LI. Okay, I will explain you the syntax in just couple minutes, but this is how I would do it. And I would say red. Now, once I save it, if I go back here, and you can see all the list items have a background color of red. And I can mention anything else I want to here. Another thing, as I mentioned, I can do it in the attribute, like an attribute for that particular HTML tag. Second way of doing is I can declare a tag called style in here within the head. Remember, it's in the head. And there I would actually specify the particular style. And then there is also a third way. Usually, if you have, let's say, have 3 styles, I can simply specify a couple more down here. For example, I also want the UL to be of a color, let's say green. And I can have, let's say, for a span I need to have another particular color. I can also do that. And let's say there are 100 different tags and I want to specify all of them. I can do all of them in this particular style attribute. But the problem is once you start looking at your web page, if you have a lot of styles in just one document, it gets confusing. In order to prevent that, you would actually use a cascading style sheet .css. So simply, I would create another document. I would create a folder usually, and I would put all the style sheets in that particular document, in that particular folder. So, and here, as you can see, I've created two different CSS documents. One is first application.css, another one is boxes. So all the styles I have here, I wouldn't actually have it here, but I would just have it in the CSS. This is only so that it's easy to read. Sorry. So it's easy to read and easy to also maintain. I wouldn't have any confusion. If I'm looking at styles, I would just look at this one particular file. If I'm looking at HTML page, I would just look at this HTML page in order to avoid any confusion. Okay, but the question would be like, how can I actually tell this HTML page that this is the CSS document I have to look at? So in order to do that, I have another tag. It's called link. So link tag links this particular CSS document to our HTML page. And in order to do that, there are different attributes I have to mention. One is href. And since first application.css, if you look at the folder structure, it's within a folder from the particular HTML page. It's within a folder called styles. So first I have to mention the styles folder. And within that, I have first application.css in order to avoid any errors. I'll just copy paste it. And second thing I have to mention is what is the type of that particular link. And here I would simply say it's a CSS type. And what is the relation of it? It's a style sheet. So those three, once I specify those three things, this particular CSS document is linked to this HTML page. And whatever styles I have in here, it would automatically apply to this HTML page. So after I saved it, let's go back and see, and it should be the same. And since the span, I can also move this one to our CSS. And this is for span. So if you look down here, let's say for this particular span, I also have multiple spans, right? I have a span here. There is another span here. There is another span here. There are multiple spans here. Yeah, even before I actually go there, let me explain you how the syntax of this is. How we would actually mention, the particular, how we would actually write the CSS document. So always it would start with a selector. Okay, remember, I have a selector, and I would have a curly brace start and curly brace, and here I would mention property name colon and the property value. And similarly, if I want to mention more than one property, I would write it to the next line, and I would have it another one. I would have another one. So it's as simple as this. So I would have a selector, curly braces, and in between those two curly braces, I would have multiple properties, as many as I want to. So similarly, looking down here, I want to mention the style for a list item. So since I want to mention the style for a list item, that is what I did. I would say list item, start bracket, end bracket, and between those two, I would specify different properties and property values. Yeah. Are there any questions? Is this clear? Okay.
Kind of.
So, okay. Do you have any questions?
No, nothing yet.
Okay. So as simple as this. selector. So whatever search I want to specify for this tag, so I would just say that particular tag name, and I would specify properties down here. And sometimes I just don't want to apply for individual properties or for individual tags. I don't want to mention these things, but I want to apply for the entire page. In order to apply for the entire page, there is a selector called star. If I say star, that automatically applies to the entire page. For example, some of the pages, if you look at Facebook, it would most of the background is white, but borders are black, not black, blue, right? And depending on your web page, if you go to Twitter, most of it is blue. So some of the things you probably want to apply throughout the entire page. In order to do that, I would simply specify star. Star is for the entire page. So if I want to specify background color, that is how I would do that for the entire page. So once I do that, let me save it, refresh it. Now you see the color of it change. And in order to look, earlier we actually looked at individual tags in the developer window, right? In the down here. Once we press F12, this one would open, and I would actually look at different individual tags. And for styles, you can see on the right, you actually have a particular section called styles. And that is where I can actually look for individual. For example, if I would select that, okay, for the entire document, HTML, you can see the background color is set to this, so and so. Coming back down here, so I specified RGB and I specified different values down here. So in order to specify colors, not just background color, any color, there are different ways of doing that. One of them, the simplest one, is actually mentioning the name of the color. For example, if I want cyan, I would specify that particular color name. Or for the basic colors, most of them have names like red, green, blue. All of those have names. But if I don't know, if I want to pick a particular shade and if I want something really particular for my web page, I can actually look at CSS color picker. Okay, just Google for that. You can see it will show you all of these colors. So you can see down here, let's say I want to pick this color, okay? And I want to pick this particular shade. So I would go there, and this is the shade and color I want. So you can actually see below, it actually represented different things down here. So if I want to mention in RGB, RGB is red, green, and blue. I would say simply, as I've shown here, RGB, and I would actually put these values in here, 227, 174, and 145. If I want to mention it in a hexadecimal, I would simply copy paste that one. So if this is what I want, another thing is I will just do that. And now the background would be this orange, sort of orange. But anyways, so since I also mentioned color to be red, everything is now red. But
so you don't have to specify hexa in the, like braces that you did before for RGB.
Yeah, that is what I did, right? Yeah, I don't have to. For hex, I don't have to do that. I just simply put hash before what color I want to mention.
Okay. So as it is, copy it and then paste. Okay.
Yep. So for hexa, I would just simply specify that. There are other things down here, HSV, HSL. There are many ways you can actually pick, but you can also look at in the W3 schools, depending on the color you pick, it would show you different shapes. Hexadecimal. I would say hexadecimal is most popular way of doing it because it's simple to represent. If I want RGB, I would specify using that. And HSL stands for hue, saturation, lightness. And this is another way of representing the same color. So there are different ways of representing the same color. Most popular is using, hexadecimal. In that way, you don't have to specify a particular color, but you can actually pick your shade of color. Okay, so if I want to mention that for the entire web page, that is how I would do it. So I would put a star, and there are different types of selectors. Okay, this is the universal selector, for the entire page. So the entire page would be of particular. This would be element selector. For each particular tag, I would have a different style. And then you can also, let's say, I don't want to mention the same background for all the spans, but I want a different color for a different span. So let me actually delete that. And in order to do that, there is something called class. I probably mentioned this in the previous meeting, in the last class we had. So there is also a class selector. And class selector always starts with a dot. I would say dot and the name of the class. In this case, for example, I would say special span. Okay, this is a special span. And I want to mention the background color for that to be something like gray. If I want to do that, I can do that. But in order to use this, I have to go here. All of these elements have few things in common. One of them is ID. Another one is class. Okay, I would simply specify class equal to, and I would specify the name of the class here. So I would say this would actually have that particular gray color. So if I want to check that, now you can see this span has a background color of gray. Okay, and as I mentioned, they have a few things common. One is class, the other one is ID. So if I want to specify a particular tag which has an ID, so-and-so ID, to have separate properties, I can also specify that. In order to specify ID, I would use a hash. Okay, hash is for ID. Let's say, let me name this div as first div. Okay, and I would simply use that down here. I would specify a hash, then the name of the particular ID. So always remember, if you just specify the element, it would apply for element. Dot is for class, class name, and hash is for ID. And again, the same principle. If I want to change, I'm just showing you this example using background color because that is an easy thing to explain with. Let's say I want it to be black. And that is what would happen. Once it refreshes. No, I didn't save it. Okay. Okay, it doesn't look pretty. But anyways, so those are the main things you have to remember is elements, IDs, and class names. And there are a few other ways of actually defining.
For the syntax for the class and the ID are purely for this context only.
Sorry, what was that?
The syntax, right? The dot followed by the class name or hash ID, purely for the CSS context.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So in HTML, I would specify ID equal to and class equal to class name. So in order to represent that in the CSS, this is how I would do it. Dot stands for class name, hash is for ID. And I can also, combine these two together. For example, let's say I have a list item, and let's say special span, let me say special. And down here, if I say li and background color equal to red, it would apply for all the list items, the red color. But let's say there is a particular list item, it also has a special, let's say li special, and the background color would be green. So in this case, since I've combined both of these elements also with class name, it would check for list items which has this particular class name. For example, I just want this third item in here to have a particular class called li special, okay, and that to have a background color of gray. I can also do that. So if I don't want to apply that particular color to, and you can see that particular item got the color of gray. And I can also do another one. Let's say the last one also has a li special. Now it would be of color gray as well. But let's say I also have another, I also want to include another class for that. So I would simply say li special dot li, let's say green. Okay. Also, in this case, since I'm specifying list item li special li green, okay, I can also specify another class down here. For example, li green. So can you guess what the color of this particular list item would be?
I think it's green.
Yeah, since I'm saying if there is a list item, it has both these class names, then I would want a color of green. And now the color is green. So as you can see, I can actually combine more than one selector together, not just one. I can, depending on the specificity, like if I want this particular class name, I can actually do that. Okay. So these are mostly the basic CSS classes or selectors. There are more than that. For example, let's say I have a header, right? Or do I have a header? I don't have a header. Let me create a header down here. I probably have. Okay. And have these two. Let's say I want to include both the headers to have a particular color, okay, or a bigger font or something like that. In which case, if I want to combine more than one particular selectors to have the same, I would separate them by comma. In this case, I would say, okay, background color, or let's say font family should be Times New Roman. So let me copy it. And the font of these two would vary to have those. So if I want to combine more than one together. So in this case, instead of checking for specific thing, it would actually apply for both of these, H1 and H2. That is what the comma is for. Is this clear? Do you guys have any questions? Okay.
No.
Okay, cool. So similar to basic element selector, I can also do that for anything specific. For example, li let me say paragraph, right? Let's say paragraph dot, let's say classes, special. I'm giving these bad names, but anyways. And I also want, let's have a history down here. Directory. And I want to combine both of these. I can simply specify in this way. So it doesn't just apply for elements, can also apply for any other thing. So if I want to combine more than one thing together to have the same. So in this case, it's R. Either one of these can have the same color. That is what this is for. And let's say I have a division down here. And within the division, I have an unordered list and list items, right? So if I want to have everything else to be of color red, but I just want the particular child of a division, right? Div, and I have UL and LI. I want these particular children. This is a parent tag. These are all the child tags because they are within that. So I want all of these to have a particular color. I would simply say div space. Space is for child selector. And again, another thing is you just have to mostly remember this one, another one, ID, and how to combine few of these basic selectors. Most, I would say about 50 to 60% of the time, this is how you would actually use the CSS selectors. There are other cases, special cases where you would use something else. So we will go through that later, but just mentioning. So within the division, I have list items, and for those, I want a particular background color. That is what I would do for that. So this would be the child selector. And this would apply for any child within that particular division. Let's say I want them to have color blue. So now you can see these have those colors, but the ones within the division, just these things have blue because they're for the child. And there is another tag called, let's say within this division, I have a span. And this is a span within the division or div. So this one, if I put just a space, it would apply to any child. Okay, it can be, for example, the direct child of division here is UL, but the grandchild is LI because it is within another hierarchy. Like I have to step 2 layers down. So this is the direct child, but I have the grandchild here. But sometimes I only want to apply particular color to or a particular style to a direct child. In that case, I would use greater than symbol and mention the name of that particular. And let's say color equal to yellow. So in this case, since this span is a direct child of that particular division, it only applies for that one. For example, let me say within this list item, I actually have another span. And it wouldn't apply for that, just one. So any questions? So you have any child and also direct child. Any child would be space, direct child would be greater than. Okay. There is one more called sibling selector. Okay. In here, if you see down here, the span and UL are siblings, right? And this list item and this list item are siblings. And if you want to apply a particular style based on that sibling, which you can apply a sibling selector. And in order to apply that particular style, let's say I have a span and I have a UL. Okay, span UL. I want the background color for that to be different. In which case I would do that, and I would say background color equal to white. So only for those particular siblings. Why is this not working? Or let me try for this one. Div and span. And you can see, since this is only for this span, is a sibling for that particular division down here. That is what it applies. Do you guys have any questions between what do we call a child, what do we call a sibling, or how does the selectors work? Any of these? It's mostly you have to remember how these things work, or it's mostly what is a comma versus what is a space, what is the greater than symbol, and so on and so forth. Any questions? Okay. And sibling selector is not space. Sorry, it's a tilde. And that is why it wasn't working earlier for this. But anyways.
Why do we use the tilde symbol?
Why am I using this tilde symbol?
Yeah, Anvesh.
Yeah, that means it's for all the siblings. It would apply for all the siblings. For example, this division and this span are in the same level, right? Since these are in the same level, those are both siblings. And to apply the same color for all the siblings, span which is within a division, I would use that.
Okay.
Or span which is a sibling to a division, not within. I have another span here, which is also a sibling to division. I want to apply that particular color. And that is why I would use a tilde. So all the siblings would have that particular background color white. So at least in this case.
Okay. Yeah,
and here.
And greater than is for grandchild, right?
Greater than is for direct child.
Direct child, okay.
Yeah. And if I just put space, it's for any child.
Okay.
Yeah, if I want to say division greater than span, let's say greater than list item or UL, then LI. So now you can see the relationship. List item, which is a child of UL, which is a child of span, which is a child of division, something like that. So this is a grandchild of span. So only if it's in that order, I would have a color. background color of yellow. I'm showing you this example just to show you I can have more than one greater than symbol, and I can go as deep as I want to. So that is what a direct child and sibling selectors are. So most of the cases, let's say I have used only these, like let's say 60 to 70% of the cases I would actually use this. And remaining of the cases, I would go through these something called pseudo selectors. Okay, what is a pseudo selector? So down here, if you look down here, all of these are applying directly to this particular element, no matter what. So I'm simply saying division, span, sibling of division is a span, and apply that particular color. It's applying for all the siblings. Or if I'm saying something should have a background color of blue, it is applying background color of blue. But pseudo selectors are applied only under particular conditions. Okay. For example, this list item has a background color of, let's say, red, right? But when I put my mouse over it, I want the color to be changed. Okay. In those cases, those are particular circumstances. So in those cases, I will use something called a pseudo selector. For example, list item, and I have a hover attribute. I would simply say whenever I want to hover on a list item, it should change the background color. And I would say background color should be changed to, let's say, I'm running out of colors, orange. And now, whenever I refresh, whenever I hover my mouse over any of the list items, the color changes to, orange. And I can also apply that for multiple layers again. If I want this to be only applied for, let's say, li special, that is what I would add again. If I want to do that, but let's say I don't want to do that. But again, I'm saying you can combine more than one selector together depending on your situation. Here I'm saying list item hover. For example, I have a couple, input items, right? I want the background color of this to be changed whenever I put my mouse in here. So there is another pseudo selector input, and I would say when I focus on it. And there are a lot of pseudo selectors. I'm just showing you these for example, but I would advise you to go ahead, look at those, try to understand, and depending on your situation, you can actually change those. Or Google those and try to figure that out. But I'm just showing you how it's actually done. So let me refresh this page. Once I have a focus on this one, is there I've specified the background color to be red and the border color to be a particular color. So that is what it's changed. I can also apply for any other input type. So any questions?
So that applies across wherever you are using the input attribute, and same for list item. When you said hover, is it gonna do it for all
only list items, but only when I hover over them.
Right, but for all the list items, okay.
Yeah, okay. But if you want to again add any of let's say which is only of a child, this one, I can still apply that one as well. I can add that here as well. I would say division list item and list item hover. Only then I want that. I can also do that. Again, I'm saying this is just shown as an example, but if you want to apply more than one selector for a particular tag, you can do that as well. There are plenty of, let's say, pseudo selectors you can use, and I'm just showing you a couple down here. Depending on your situation, you probably want to figure that out. Okay, and there is another pseudo selector. Again, as I mentioned to you before, pseudo selectors are applied only on a particular conditions. You say this is a particular condition, do these. So there is another thing called first child, and li list item. Only when it's the first child, I would apply that particular background color. So if I refresh, you can see that only the first child, has that color. Similar to first child, I also have a last child. Yeah, you have a question. Okay, so similar to that one, I also have something called last child, and that would apply for that last child. Let me change the color. I don't know what this color is, but and these are different colors. Last shells are different color, and first ones are different color. There is also something called nth child. Okay, and nth child, and I would actually supply the formula here. For example, 2n minus 1 or 2n. 2n basically means every other child, right? Even numbers, all even number of child. So n can range from 1 till however long your list is. So once it starts, it would check, okay, 2n equal to, it would start with 2 times 1, right? So it's the second child, 2 times 2, fourth child, so on and so forth. If I change the formula again, let's say minus 1. Again, 2 times 1 minus 1 is 1, right? So every other odd child. I can have any formula here based on n, and it would actually apply that particular color to those particular nth child. So let's say 2n minus 1, and background color is something like this. And you can see the first one, third one, so on and so forth has this color. Any questions? Okay, so first child, last child, nth child, and there is also something called first of type. Since again, it's if it's first of that particular type within that particular level, it would apply for that. Similar to first of type,
Is it
I
like
also
first
have
child?
last of type. It's not first child, that is a confusion. First of type. For example, let me show you with the span maybe. Second of type. It's almost similar to child, but it's not. It's if let's say within this division I have a span. Okay, if it's only the first of this particular type, or that particular span would have that color, since that is first of that type. Also, you can see this, it also applies for this one, because within that, wherever it is, this is first of that particular kind. You can see it's almost close to child, but depending on your situation, it may change. Again, you have similar to first of type, you have last of type and nth of type, and the same rules apply for those. But one important thing you probably want to notice this. Sorry, let me. span, let's say there is another pseudo selector which is called not. Not applies for not simply says only when this is not this particular thing, do apply this particular background color, whatever it is. So I'm saying not dot, for example, let me create. I have two subscripts, right? One down here, another one down here. Again, is this clear about what first of type or first child difference? It almost looks similar. I would say it's almost similar, but depending on the situation, it could be only the first one of this particular type of span. Or I would say it's the same thing, but it's not. But anyways, is that clear, or any questions regarding that?
Can you repeat the last one, Anvesh? Not.
Yeah,
not.
so not, yeah, sorry, let me get down here. Let's say the class for this one is sub special. Okay. Okay. Whenever I say not, it would it's wherever I don't have a class of name subspecial, it would apply. Whenever I say not, I can use anything again down here, not just class. I can also use an ID, right? Like for example, I have this ID equal to sub1. Okay, I can use ID. I can use anything down here. The concept is only when it is not this particular thing, apply that, whatever color or style I actually mentioned. So I would say not, and I would specify whatever selector I want to. Let's say in this case, I want to choose a class, and I want the background color to be, let's say, magenta. I don't know. That's the standard color. Let me pick one from here. Okay, so when I say not, so when I say apply for this one, it would apply for this, right? Not is just the opposite of that. It would not apply for that one, but every other sub. So you see here, it didn't apply for the one which has a class name of subspecial. Okay. I can have multiple. I can have another similar water down here, and I can see both of these has, but not the one which has the class name of subspecial. That is the only difference.
Okay, Anvesh, thank you.
Sure. And apart from all of these, and I would say this one, pseudo selectors and all of these basic selectors would be applicable for 70 to 80% of the styling. Like if you understand these, you can actually be fine with those. There are a few others. One is attribute selector. Another one is attribute selector. You know what an attribute is, right? Like for every particular tag, I can have a particular attribute. For example, I would say green, this is an attribute, okay? Or I can have another attribute called div1. So these are all attributes. So there is another thing called attribute selector. And in order to apply styles based on a particular attribute, I will use an attribute selector. For example, down here, I have an attribute called green. So I would say green. And I would simply specify the color, background color for that one to be green or anything else. And one second. Do you guys notice that? Okay, right here. Sorry. So depending on the attribute, I don't need to just have it for division, but I can also have, for example, let's say this paragraph down here, the first one. So I can also specify that attribute down there. And once I refresh it, it also applies for that particular one. And I can also mention it anywhere. So attribute selector is simple. If it has an attribute of, if it has that attribute, just apply for that. And you might have another question like another thing I can also mention is attribute green equal to, let's say, I'm not just matching the attribute, but also I'm matching the attribute and the value of it. So the property and the value of it. Let's say green equal to true. Okay. In that case, I would simply use that down here. I would say green equal to true. And I will specify whatever background color I want that. Let's say I don't want to pick green, but this one down here. So that particular paragraph has that color. So since I have, I mean, both the paragraph here and the division has the same attribute, but I'm saying it just doesn't, I don't want to just match the attribute, but also the value of it. So I would specify attribute equal to particular value. Is that clear? Any questions regarding the
should that
attribute selectors?
already exist, the attribute? Okay.
Sorry. Yep. So since the attribute already exists here, I mean, it doesn't exist. I'm just creating it here. This is my custom attribute. Green is my own custom attribute.
So you can create your own custom attributes and use it across.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah. Any other questions? Okay. And I don't actually have to use what do you call equals. There are I think I keep forgetting that. I think dollar. Anyways, apart from equal to, I would give you guys this as an exercise. So I want you guys to find different sort of attribute selectors. In case, let me say, here I'm only comparing if it's equal to true, right? There are other ways of actually doing attribute selectors. One is starts with, okay, ends with, contains. Okay, those are three different things. Sorts of attribute selectors I can have. So apart from equal to, I think one is dollar. Another one is star. Moni, do you know or remember any of those? Are you on mute? Sorry, I cannot hear you. Do you remember any of those? I just cannot remember. Do you remember any of those attribute selectors apart from equals?
Colon?
Or colon. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, like I would have a column here. Is that what you're saying? Anyways, apart from just those equals, there are also dollar and starts with, and you guys, I will give you this as an assignment, so try to figure out. Okay, so as of now, I've discussed mostly the selectors, okay, and different types of properties. Mostly I've discussed about background color. Apart from background color, there are many other properties as well for a particular selector. So as you can see down here, if I have a style, okay, equal to, I can select font size, right? Font family, font weight. There are many other styles I can actually apply. So similar to that, I can do that down here as well in the CSS document. So one of them is font family. Font family just is what font family you want to apply. Again, I would suggest there are like hundreds or probably thousands of different font families you probably want to look at. CSS list. So you just can mention what the font family is. For example, these are basic ones. You can actually search for there are hundreds more. And here it says it's a cursive font family. So if I want the style of the text to be of this cursive format, I can just simply specify font family equal to so-and-so color, or I'm sorry, so-and-so style. And apart from that, I can also specify font weight. Font weight can be bold. If I want to mention bold, I can specify font weight equal to bold. And another important thing you may have to use is a text align. You guys know what text align is, right? So there are different ways of aligning text. If I want all the text to be aligned left, I would use left. I also have right, have center. So depending on how you want the text to be aligned in your HTML page, you can specify those particular. So now I said text align equal to center, and I want that to be bold, and I specified the font family to be so and so. So that is what it's applying. I can also have it justified. So depending on your need, you can change those. And also I can specify, let's say I have a paragraph, right? Let's say all of the paragraphs down here should have a particular line height. Line height is the distance between two lines, right? Simply. So I can also specify line height. Another thing I forgot to mention is, or right now I would mention. So usually there are different ways of actually expressing distances, like for example, line height, or did I mention anything else? Okay. So one way of doing is it's by pixel, okay? 1 pixel, 2 pixel, or so on and so forth, whatever you want to mention. So it would actually leave a line height of 1 pixel. But most of the modern web applications you actually see, those are not used only on desktops, right? I would, if I'm trying to open a web page immediately, I wouldn't actually go to my machine trying to open the web page, right? I have my cell phone with me, so I would try to open with that. So using pixel can be good, but you would exactly know how big the particular element is, but that is not always advisable. I would rather use percentages, okay? Percentage would say, let me go back down here, and let's say header, you see, H1 font family and so on and so forth. And I can also mention font size, right? I can specify in terms of, pixel, but it is always advisable to use in terms of percentages. So it says 110%. So whatever percentage initial it is, I want that to be more than that. It should be 110%. So this way, no matter what sort of browser you would use, your fonts would look consistent and you would have less issues. So I can use that. There is also called EM. Okay, one EM is usually the actual size of that particular element, but I can specify in fractions. I want 1.3 EM, so on and so forth. So font size, I would use. I wouldn't actually use font sizes or distances between different things. I wouldn't use pixel unless you actually have a need for that, but rather use percentages mostly. For example, if I want to define the height and width of this particular H1, I would say height, and I would mention it in terms of percentage, 100%. What happened? But anyways, so is that clear? Why I would mention it in terms of percentage, not pixel. Pixel, I can use it. When I use pixel, I know it is bound to so and so number of pixels, but depending on your browser, it may look a little different. For example, your mobile phone may be of this so many pixels, but if I specify in terms of percentage, it would say, okay, it usually is 100%, but I want to actually have it more than 100%. It should appear so and so. So that is why I would use percentages. Is that clear? Any questions? Okay. So another thing you can see here, down here, is it actually created a box, right? It has different just margin, border, padding, and the actual particular thing. So in HTML, everything has a box model. Even though you actually don't see it here, it is how it is actually rendered in terms of boxes. So let me go down here. Which one? H2. Okay, let's see. This is the div, and it has where is that? Okay. So you can see the actual content is down here, but there's a padding, border, and a margin, right? I'll try to show it, but I can show it using H1. So padding is whatever the actual content is, whatever you see down here in the middle. 467 by 37 is the actual content. So apart from that, I also have a padding. And if I change the padding here, or let me go back down here. Let's say I don't want both of them to have that. Let me show you something. Okay, you can see this. So this is how most of the tags are in HTML. You would have the actual content in the center, and padding is something around that particular content. And every particular content would have a border, okay? And that is, let me show you that with a different example, actually. it would be clear. So I have two things down here, box 1 and box 2. Let me, you can see I have two boxes down here, right? 1 and 2. Okay. Initially, how I set them is to have no padding, padding of 0 and margin of 0. Okay. So let us see what happens when I actually increase the padding. Let's say I want a 10 pixel padding here and also another 10 pixel padding down here. Let me refresh that. So padding is within that particular box, or in this case, it's a paragraph. Okay. As you can see, it didn't actually increase the size of the content in here, but the area around it. So that is what a padding is. Okay. So the content I have down here, and around that, it has some content, empty space. That empty space is called padding. So if I want to increase this, I can show you again. Have the first one to have a padding of 20 and the second one to be 10. So now you can see the space around this first particular tag increased while the space around this one is the same. So the padding is the empty space around a particular element. And you guys know what a border is. Border is the actual space after that empty space. And solid, let me. So I have the particular element. I have some empty space, that is a padding. And around that, I have a border. Border is the space around that padding. And between two elements, let's say between element 1 and the tag 2, between these two, usually I would want to define a space, like I want to socially distance them. So in order to do that, so remember margin as a socially distant space. So that is what the margin is. So now around, so this is the actual element. I specified there is a padding. So it would actually leave 10 pixel by 10, or in this case, 20 pixel space between the actual content, and the border is created, which is 30 pixel, and margin is the actual distance between this particular element and a different element. Is this clear, or do you guys have any questions? Do you guys understand what margin is?
Yes, Anvesh, it's good.
Okay. Okay, cool. So once I increase the margin for this particular element as well, you see there is an invisible space created. So, and I can also have a border, and let's say 10 pixels. I can also define a color for this one. So looks like it's pink, but anyway. So, and once we look at on the body, but you can see that particular paragraph, you know, it has a border, padding, and a margin. Okay. And similar to that one, the second one also has the same thing. And let's say I also want to define height and width for those particular, and also has a height and width. This one also has a height and width. So once you specify the particular height and width, it will be bound to those height and width. So this one is of height 100, width is 100. The actual element, not the entire box you actually see, is 100 by 100. This is also 100 by 100. But if I select this particular thing, you see it doesn't say 100 by 100, but it says 200 by 200, right? So where do you actually get the height and width, even though it's specified? So it's nothing but the padding you see here, padding on the top and the bottom. Similarly, it added the margin and the border. And if you look down here, another thing I want to mention is, it usually, when I have two particular elements side by side, it would pick the margin, which is the largest one. So in this case, since it's 60 pixels, it's just spacing them with 60 pixels. If I increase this to, let's say, 20 pixels, it will just pick the 20 pixels. Or if I say 10 pixels, or let's say 5 pixels, in this case, it would actually pick this 10 pixels. So the spacing is determined by the maximum margin. In this case, it's a 10 pixels. So yeah, do you guys have any questions regarding the box model and or any of the basic selectors down here? There are plenty. So if you guys have any questions. Okay. So I would stop the class today. We have, in tomorrow's class, I would be discussing about grids in CSS. Grids is another important topic. Whatever I've discussed so far is really basic, like how to apply colors or font size or any of these for a particular element. But let's say, let me show you an example. For example, if I go to apple.com, right? This particular website. Once I actually maximize this, you can see it has all of the icons on the top, all the navigation icons on the top, or I can select those individually. And have few stuff down here, okay? But let me say, if I'm actually designing a web page, I don't want to design the web page just for one particular thing, right? I don't want to design it just for the desktop, or I don't want to design it for a tablet. I want to design it for all of the above. Like I want to, in other terms, in programming or HTML terms, you would say the web page should be responsive. So no matter where you're actually looking the web page, it has to scale based on that. So now I'm looking at the desktop, and if I'm shrinking that, okay, now you see the gap decrease. But now if I'm trying to do that, it is actually showing all of these down here. But oops, let me decrease that more. Now you see all of the things you have seen on the top, okay, it slowly decreases. It goes to the hamburger menu down here. So, and if I decrease it more, okay, it is selected in this way, and everything sets in just one. You can actually see everything in just one. So this is maybe how it would be on a mobile browser, right? So no matter what you're looking at, no matter where you're looking the web page, it should be consistent, or it should be responsive. It shouldn't shrink, and it shouldn't look weird. So most of the web pages designed these days are designed based on those principles. No matter where the web page is, or no matter who is looking at it. So if you, right now, this is how it looks. Now it decreased the image size, and now it collapsed everything into one thing. See, so tomorrow we will be discussing about how can we actually do this. It can be done in different ways. One of the ways you can do is Bootstrap. Another one is Grid. I would go through basic grids tomorrow or explain that, and I would start with some Bootstrap as well. So today, the task, the assignment would be simple, depending on just try to use as many selectors as you can in your web page, just to understand how all of these things work better. So I would advise you to use an ID, class name, element for the entire page, or pseudo selectors. Also have some pseudo selectors in your web page, so you can actually understand better how these work. And also, if you get a chance, try to define padding, border, and margin. And yeah, any questions? Okay, so I'll start with the box, or not box, but grid system tomorrow, and we'll go on from there. Thank you guys. Good night.